Once upon a time in the not-so-distant future, 4 astronauts stationed at an orbital space station above Earth found themselves in a crisis. A piece of space debris was hurtling toward them at high speed, while the station's propulsion module had malfunctioned. If it wasn't repaired immediately, the entire station would be destroyed. After fixing the source of the malfunction, the mission specialist, Jonathan, urged the commander, Vincent, who was outside making repairs, to return inside at once. Their technician, Justine, reported that the system needed to be rebooted before they could move the station. Meanwhile, their chief scientist, Dr. Andrea, reported that the collision was predicted to occur in 5 minutes. Worried that they wouldn't have enough time, she suggested initiating evacuation procedures. However, Jonathan refused. If his calculations were correct, the system would be ready before impact. And just moments before the debris reached them, the space station successfully shifted position. The crew cheered, not only celebrating their narrow escape, but also marking their 500th day on the station. Then, the story flashes back 500 days earlier, when the astronauts had just been launched to the space station to begin a scientific and psychological mission called Project M. In this project, the astronauts would spend 1,000 days in orbit to study the long-term effects of space on the human body and mind, before embarking on real interplanetary travel, whether to migrate to another planet or simply explore those within the solar system. The main reason behind Project M was that humanity was facing a severe water crisis. Nations were competing over what little remained. Water was no longer free. It had become more valuable than gold or oil. Because of this, scientists began searching for sources of water beyond Earth, and their attention turned to Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, believed to hold vast reserves of water. One day, a scientist from Quebec named Lecote sent a probe, a robotic explorer, to Europa to determine whether water truly existed there. Lecote wasn't just any scientist. He was the richest man on Earth and the owner of a powerful technology and robotics company. He believed the solar system was full of hidden treasures, one of which was Europa. Scientists suspected that beneath Europa's thick, icy crust lay massive oceans, potentially containing more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. This made Europa one of humanity's best hopes for overcoming Earth's water crisis. But before anyone could be sent there, Lecote wanted to conduct a trial mission, Project M, to study the long-term physical and psychological effects of spending 1,000 days in space. Naturally, this was no easy mission, so Lecote chose the best of the best. He appointed veteran astronaut Vincent as commander, Vincent being the second human ever to set foot on Mars, now determined to become the first person to step on Europa. Alongside him was Jonathan, a brilliant engineer assigned to analyze the data sent by the Europa probe. Then there was Justine, a talented female technician responsible for handling all technical issues aboard the station. Finally, Dr. Andrea, the chief scientist, was tasked with maintaining communication with mission control and monitoring the crew's health and psychological state. The scene then shifts to the present. The mission has now been running for 900 days, with only 100 days left before the crew returns to Earth. In the stillness of space, Jonathan is seen playing his beloved piano, reminiscing about the day he visited his mother's grave before the mission's departure. Moments later, he receives a data transmission from the probe confirming that water has been discovered on Europa. The crew immediately reports the good news to mission control, and it doesn't take long before the discovery of water on Europa spreads across the globe, becoming a major topic of discussion everywhere. The astronauts celebrate the historic find by drinking a small bottle of peace water that Andrea had secretly smuggled aboard before launch. She had been able to do this because she was romantically involved with Dr. Xavier, the mission planning director. Justine then asks Vincent to tell them about his experience on Mars, something he has rarely spoken about. Vincent explains that being on Mars felt almost like arriving in a city he had never visited before, except that the sense of anxiety was far greater. Because in space travel, the risk is one's life itself. When the mission succeeded, the only thing on his mind was his family, especially his only son. Vincent says he cannot quite describe the happiness he felt upon returning to Earth, but he's certain that everyone here will experience that same joy when they finally reunite with their loved ones back home. So, all they need to do is stay sane, stay healthy, and do their best until the mission is complete. Afterward, they head to the observatory to gaze at the planet Jupiter, imagining that one day they might actually reach it. Suddenly, an alarm sounds, warning of an incoming solar storm of considerable magnitude. Fortunately, the crew doesn't need to panic. The station is positioned behind Earth and built from materials strong enough to withstand radiation. Still, as a precaution, they are instructed to rest in their quarters until the storm passes. Once the storm is over, Vincent calls the crew to gather on the bridge, but is shocked to see Justine emerging from Jonathan's room. He immediately reprimands them, saying that as professionals, they should not engage in romantic relationships during the mission. Personal entanglements, he warns, can lead to conflict and jeopardize the mission. While Justine apologizes, Jonathan defends himself, pointing out that Andrea too had violated mission protocol by bringing the peace water aboard. Their argument, however, is abruptly cut short when Andrea reports a devastating explosion in the city of Montreal. The blast has killed hundreds of people, including schoolchildren. Rumors suggest that the attack was carried out by terrorists angered by the discovery on Europa, fearing that governments would monopolize the water source to control the world. Moments later, Lucote contacts the crew to inform them that their families are safe, except for Vincent's son, who has been severely injured but is receiving intensive treatment in the hospital. Lucote assures them that they shouldn't worry and must continue Project M as planned. On the 1000th day, Mission Control will send a second team to replace them. However, communication with Mission Control will be restricted temporarily to prevent sabotage from hostile groups. Lucote also delivers tragic news. Dr. Xavier, the mission planning director and a member of the second team, was among those killed in the incident. Hearing this, Andrea breaks down in tears. They had just gotten engaged shortly before the mission's departure. To her, Xavier was the person who had changed her life, the one who made all of this possible. Day 926, Vincent contacts his son, who is still being treated in the hospital. The boy complains that he can no longer play ping pong because his arm is broken. Vincent tries to comfort him, telling his son that he isn't weak and that he will overcome this challenge, but suddenly the communication is cut off. Justine goes to the systems room to check, but she finds no technical issues. At the same time, Vincent gathers the crew in the observatory and shows them live images of massive explosions occurring across different regions of Earth. Satellites detect large amounts of radiation now covering the planet's surface. Andrea tries to contact Mission Control, but accidentally connects with the German station instead. She asks them to patch her through to Quebec, but unfortunately they can't help. All global communications are down. Justine suspects that a nuclear war has broken out on Earth and suggests that the commander initiate an evacuation procedure to find out what's happening. However, Vincent refuses until they receive official information from Mission Control. He argues that the explosions might be caused by damaged nuclear reactors and that it's safer to stay put and continue the mission. 6 days after the nuclear blasts, the crew still has not re-established contact with Mission Control. Vincent, increasingly worried about his son, begins to recall the moments they spent together. Though he stubbornly insists on continuing the mission, his instincts as a father are pulling him back toward Earth. To cope with his despair, Vincent asks Andrea to conduct a psychological evaluation on him, but she refuses, admitting that she herself is also under immense emotional stress. Still, as a friend, she offers to listen. Vincent opens up to her. One of the reasons he was so determined to complete the mission was his dream of becoming the first person to set foot on Europa. He confesses that he has lived much of his life in disappointment ever since he became only the second person to walk on Mars. Despite giving everything to the Quebec Space Agency, he never felt truly fulfilled. But now, Vincent realizes that family is far more important than being a decorated astronaut. The rest of the crew feels the same way. They begin to question the point of completing the mission if Earth has fallen into war, if there is no home left to return to. Before they realize it, the mission has reached day 1000, the day they were scheduled to return to Earth. Yet even now, the station remains completely cut off from mission control. Suddenly, alarms sound throughout the station. Vincent has activated the evacuation procedure for himself. The crew rushes to the airlock to stop the launch. Unfortunately, even though they manage to pull Vincent out of the landing capsule, the launch sequence cannot be aborted. The capsule detaches from the station and disappears into the darkness of space. Andrea is forced to sedate Vincent and lock him in the medical bay. Following the incident, Vincent is declared unfit to command, and as the next highest-ranking officer, Andrea assumes control of the mission. The scene then flashes back to a few days before the mission's departure. At that time, Xavier confessed his wish to marry Andrea. Andrea hesitated, worrying that Xavier wouldn't be able to endure the separation, since Project M would last 3 years, and after that, Xavier would spend the next 3 years on his own mission. That meant they wouldn't see each other for 6 years, but Xavier didn't care. Whether it was 3 years, 6 years, or even 1,000 years, he said, he would wait for her. Back on the station, when Justine asks Jonathan to keep her company, he coldly refuses, saying it's not the time, then harshly orders her to leave his room. Day 1002, 2 days after the capsule disappeared into space, Vincent's condition has started to improve. Jonathan confronts him, demanding an explanation for his actions. Vincent admits his mistake. At that moment, the only thing on his mind was returning to Earth to find his son. He says he unintentionally triggered the evacuation sequence without realizing it. Jonathan, of course, refuses to accept such a ridiculous excuse. As a professional astronaut, one who had even set foot on Mars, Vincent's explanation is to him completely irresponsible, selfish, and unacceptable. Because of Vincent's reckless action, their only landing capsule is now lost, leaving everyone trapped aboard the station with no idea when or if they will ever return home. Andrea tries to calm Jonathan down, explaining that their supplies are still enough for about 25 more days. If they ration carefully, they might be able to stretch it even longer. During that time, she says they'll have enough opportunity to figure out a solution for how to get back to Earth, but Justine is skeptical. What can we possibly do? It's been 3 months since they lost contact with Earth, and that communication breakdown is likely due to a nuclear war raging down below. If the commander had initiated the evacuation procedure back then, they wouldn't have to suffer through all of this now. Day 1018, 17 days after losing the capsule. The crew still hasn't found a way home. The situation fills Justine with despair. She's losing hope that they'll ever make it back to Earth alive. Her mind drifts back to the past, to the time when her best friend tried to stop her from joining this mission. But Justine had insisted that Project M was vital for humanity's progress. That memory now twists painfully inside her, feeding her frustration and hopelessness. Eventually, unable to bear it any longer, Justine decides to end her life by stepping out into the dark, silent void of space. The station's alarms blare immediately, but it's too late. The crew can only watch helplessly as Justine's body drifts farther and farther away from the station until she disappears into the darkness. Her death devastates Jonathan. He blames himself. If only he had been there for her, if only he had comforted her in her despair, she might not have done it. Moments later, Andrea receives an unexpected transmission from Soyuz, a Russian rescue capsule flying nearby. A cosmonaut named Kelvin requests permission to dock, saying he needs medical assistance. Andrea grants permission, and once Soyuz docks, Kelvin is immediately taken to the medical bay. After running some tests, Andrea discovers that Kelvin's body is contaminated with radioactive particles from a solar storm. The radiation has already caused severe internal damage, and without immediate hospital treatment, Kelvin won't survive for long. Meanwhile, Jonathan's attention shifts to the Soyuz capsule itself. The Soyuz is designed for 3 passengers, and there are 4 people currently aboard the station. He starts thinking, what if they waited until Kelvin passed away, and then used the Soyuz to return to Earth? Andrea objects. By her calculations, by the time their supplies run out, Kelvin will likely still be alive, and she refuses to leave him behind. In fact, she hopes to take him back to Earth for proper medical care if possible. However, as Jonathan points out, the Soyuz can only safely support 3 people. If they overload it, The parachute could tear, or the capsule could disintegrate during re-entry. Andrea acknowledges his concern, but adds another grim fact. With an extra person aboard the station, their oxygen will run out in 10 days. That means they have only 10 days left to make the most difficult decision of their lives. After Kelvin's condition began to improve, he told them what had happened to him. The protective panel of the Russian station, which was supposed to shield them from the solar storm, had been damaged. At first, there were 3 survivors. They carried out an emergency evacuation procedure just before the station was destroyed. Unfortunately, only Kelvin managed to survive until he finally found this station. Vincent then asked if it was true that the massive explosions on Earth were caused by a nuclear war triggered by the discovery of water on Europa. Kelvin confirmed this. However, he explained that the World War on Earth wasn't actually because of a water crisis, but because of the discovery of a mysterious object besides water on Europa. Jonathan re-examined the data sent from Europa, and after further diagnostics, the probe detected a mysterious object resembling a spacecraft. This discovery proved Kelvin's statement and revealed that humans were not alone in the universe. There was a possibility that the main goal of this project was not just to prepare astronauts to fly to Europa in search of water, but to go there to study alien technology. The general public was unaware of this, but the major nations already knew. That was why they used water as the excuse for war, so that whoever won could gain control of the alien technology. Vincent then said that they must return to Earth immediately to spread this news to the world. Even though the war had happened, that didn't mean no one had survived. This was their chance to unite the world. Everyone there was an astronaut, a scientist, and an explorer, which meant they had a responsibility to find answers about who these aliens were, why they were on Europa, and where they came from. 4 days later, while Kelvin was receiving treatment, he thanked Andrea, although he also realized that his life might not last much longer. Back on the bridge, Vincent informed Andrea and Jonathan that the oxygen supply was rapidly depleting and they needed to plan an evacuation soon. Andrea said that judging from his condition, Kelvin still seemed capable of surviving for a few more weeks, and she didn't want to leave him alone on the station. While resting, Jonathan told Vincent that before his departure, his father had given him a letter at the cemetery, one that he had never read. He knew his father only wanted to blame him for joining Project M. But before Jonathan could finish his story, both were startled by Andrea's scream coming from the airlock. Kelvin was trying to escape with the Soyuz. He had found out that the 3 of them were trapped on the station after losing their capsule. Kelvin suspected that they were going to leave him behind and intended to return to Earth using the Soyuz. Andrea tried to reason with him, assuring that they had never planned to abandon him. Eventually, Kelvin understood and gave up his intention to leave. After that, the 4 of them worked together to design the safest possible landing scenario. However, as Vincent had already said, the landing would be extremely dangerous, especially without guidance from mission control, as they could end up landing in the middle of the ocean or in other hazardous locations. Therefore, Vincent decided to stay on the station and asked Andrea, Jonathan, and Kelvin to return to Earth. Vincent only wanted to atone for his mistakes, for failing to lead the mission properly and losing the rescue capsule. 4 hours before departure, Vincent wrote a letter and handed it to Jonathan to be given to his son. If he was still alive, Vincent only wanted his son to know that he loved him very much. The letter reminded Jonathan of the one his own father had once given him. Jonathan then read it, and it turned out that his father had never hated or blamed him. In fact, he had always supported everything Jonathan did. 30 minutes before the flight, Jonathan suddenly changed his mind. He decided to stay at the station and asked Vincent to replace him. Vincent was a father and the mission commander. He had an obligation to find his son and report what had happened at the station. In addition, only Jonathan could explain the data about Europa, and he would spread the information to the entire world through all frequency channels so that when the communication system was restored, everyone could know about it. At first, Vincent refused because he was the commander who should be responsible for the mission. Jonathan then reminded him that Andrea was an accomplished scientist, Vincent was an experienced astronaut, and Kelvin would be on Russia's side to help stop the war. Meanwhile, Jonathan was nobody, but he would do his best for the sake of human civilization. In return, Jonathan wanted Vincent to find his father and deliver his letter of apology. Before saying goodbye, Andrea promised that if possible, she would send help as soon as she could. The scene then flashes back to when Vincent, Andrea, and Justine were interviewed before the mission's departure. To the media, the three of them said that Jonathan was a genius scientist with a pure heart. His speed of thought surpassed others in analysis and problem-solving. Therefore, Jonathan was an irreplaceable soldier on the space station. Basically, the four astronauts supported each other, but the greatest test of humanity was how they faced problems with a level of difficulty beyond their ability. In the end, however, they would find the best way to solve the problem. After Soyuz left the station, Jonathan began transmitting a message about the discovery of the alien spacecraft on Europa, which would change humanity's perspective on the universe. And finally, the film ended. And that's it for the story series of this film. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to support this channel by subscribe, like and share. See you in the next video. Goodbye.